All right, so I'm back again. This week I was working on these new tiles. These are the dirt tiles, which are going to be throughout the game. Some areas of the game are going to be dirt. Some of them are going to be stone. And actually, I think some parts of the game are actually going to be outside, maybe. So there'll be like grass and stuff. But the dirt's going to be pretty common. Before I had drawn some dirt tiles, but I hadn't really given any. Those were just like a rough draft. So this was my first, one of my first attempts at doing what they'll actually look like. I decided that I experimented with a bunch of stuff, but ultimately I wanted them to be really simple and without outlines, because if they get any more complicated than this, it's just too much to look at. And also, when you zoom out, the outlines get a little bit too thin. So yeah, I thought this was pretty good for now. One thing is, certain tiles will be rotated randomly to give more of a more variety. And once I'm also going to add in like different versions of the same tile to add even more variety. So I think right now there's like the minimum amount of variety because I only did one of each. So I think when I add more variety, it'll look a little bit better. But I am also open to just redoing it. Because basically I had to kind of figure out what I wanted. And now that I know what I want and I know how to do it, it's a lot easier to redo it again. But I actually think they look pretty good. It's kind of cool how the background tiles are in one art style, where it's all solid colors and no outlines. And then these characters here are in another art style, where there is outlines. It's not solid colors, it's got gradients, like a combination of gradients and solid colors. And then there's like the third art style, where when you're talking to somebody, now there's way more detail and like shading and no gradients. So I can mix together the three styles, and I think they all work pretty well together. But we'll get a better idea of what it'll look like once I get more of the game done, obviously. And also in the background, it's not just going to be a solid color. Probably going to be just some other tiles in the background. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and show you all the different types of tiles I did. Actually, one thing you'll notice is like here, it's not going to look like this, or even here. It's not just going to be flat like that. It's just because there are quite a few different tiles. I only added 8 so far. There's maybe going to be like 50 or something for each tile set. But these are the tiles I did. So there's 8 here. Before I only had these 3, like the rough drafts of these 3. This is like a bottom corner, there's another corner of the wall, part of the top of the wall, and then the edge of the top of the wall. Yeah, and then the way these work, because obviously they have to be able to loop, is they start and end at the same spot. So you can see it starts here and ends here. And yeah, in order to do the corners and stuff, I just created some guides, which you can see here. So for example, I have like a wall. If I want to draw a tile, I just have to make sure the wall starts here. If I want to draw a wall tile, it has to start here and end here. And then like as it gets to the edge of the top, I would need one like this, and then another one like this. So I can use these guides to redraw, like to add new tiles, and I'll know that they start and end at the same places. Yeah, so like this one can be rotated randomly on the horizontal axis. Same with this one. This can be X or Y rotated. This one can't, this one can't. This one can be Y rotated. This is the wall, and then these two can't. And yeah. But basically, this is actually just version 1. The next version is going to be a little bit cooler. So one thing I did was you could see the player as being is behind the dirt right here. So what I did was I wanted the dark dirt to be above the player and the light dirt to be behind the player to create more of like a 3D or like a 2.5D effect. And right now it's working pretty well. But the problem right now is I have to define whether the entire tile is behind or above the player. So like the tile I'm standing on right now is behind. This wall tile is in front. But then these tiles here are both behind, even though this dirt really should be, like the dark dirt really should be in front. So what I decided is this is pretty much working, but like my hair cuts into the wall a bit. And then if I jump, you know, maybe my leg will cut into the wall a bit too. So I think it's worth it to separate the images and have the dark dirt as one set of images and then the light as another. And then the dark, I can control the layers better that way. Yeah, and that's not that much extra work, but it'll help for sure, because I can also randomize like on tiles like this where there's both light and dark. They're not going to be like fused together anymore, so there'll be even more variety because, you know, different dark tiles can go with different light tiles as opposed to always being the same pairing. But yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have several versions of each tile, and then the dark and the light, and then I'm going to mix and match them randomly and then rotate them and stuff randomly. So it'll add a lot of variety with like minimal effort. Even though I only did one of each tile, there's already like a decent amount of variety. So I'm pretty happy with it so far. Yeah, I can show you, there's an earlier version I did. So when I was experimenting with different tiles, maybe I should have saved some more versions, but this is the other version I put like a decent amount of effort into, which is, it's the same thing except the walls have light as well. And I think it's pretty clear that there's just too much detail, and also the 2.5D effect doesn't really work when you put the light on the sides like this. And then also on this version, the player doesn't go behind the dark part, and that doesn't really look that good. So it was after I did this version, I decided to have the dark go above the player. But yeah, some of the other versions were basically just overly detailed. And I also tried using gradients, but it's just too much to look at, especially when you zoom out. So I'm probably going to go with what I have now. But now that I have these guides and like I've figured it out, I can definitely change the way it looks. Like maybe it's too triangular, like every single thing is a triangle. So I think maybe it's a little bit too triangular right now. But I think it looks pretty good. Yeah, one thing I should probably mention is the zooming. You'll notice like as I'm moving, the camera starts zooming in more. So the way my game works is certain areas I want to zoom in, certain areas I want to zoom out. And one of the ways I control that is with what I call zoom ranges. So it just takes the X value of the player or the Y value and it has like a start and an end point on the zoom. So as you move, your position is what determines the zoom. And I'm going to use that like sparingly, but I think it actually is a pretty cool effect. I don't know if I've seen that in other games, but I'm pretty happy with it. I think it works well in a lot of scenarios. Yeah, and then another thing I did with the camera is when you initialize a dialogue, it'll zoom in a bit now. So sometimes the camera zooms in based on like an event, and other times it'll zoom in based on a zoom range. Zoom range I just define like this. So I say like from this X to this X, it starts at this and ends at this. And I can have like, I can use those creatively to make the game kind of come alive more. But yeah, as far as the tiles go, that's pretty much all there is to say for now. I just have to add more tiles, make sure there's no like hard, corners like this or even like this. But yeah, as far as the camera goes, I mentioned earlier that I had a bug, which was preventing me from doing this zoom in. So I did actually rewrite the whole camera class using a little bit of a different method. And now everything works a lot better. If you want to see what the bug was, I was really bothering me before. This is what the bug looked like. Oh yeah, and this is like an older version. This is, to show you the bug, I'm showing you just a previous version of the game. So here, when I try to zoom in to talk to a player or talk to an NPC, the camera gets confused and it takes like a curved route because I'm taking the world and I'm making it smaller, and I'm also moving it over at the same time. And the combination of those two things makes the camera get confused. And I can definitely write some math that'll fix this, but I'm not that good at math, and I didn't want to. I wanted things to be simpler. So I have like a new. My new camera is a lot better than my old camera. But yeah, here you can see these old tiles. They don't look as good as the new tiles, that's for sure. There's also a little bug. Maybe it won't show up on the video, but there's like little cracks between the tiles, and then little pieces of image get spliced out wrong. So I had to also fix that bug. There's like a little, I'm not going to get into it, but I had to fix that. Once I fixed that, that opened the door to start drawing the new tiles. So since that's such an important thing, I went ahead with that. Yeah, so anyway, as far as what I want to show for this video, I guess just the tiles and the new camera. I also redid this lever and these bars to make them a little bit cleaner, but I actually made a mistake and the outlines are too thin. So the outlines are supposed to be the same thickness as these NPCs, but I messed up, so I'm going to redo those again. And I also added some little holes here so that there's like little cracks so that when you open and close the gate, it actually goes into the wall. I think maybe these gradients are a little bit too extreme, so I might fix those as well. I also made the rats smaller. And the rats go above the wall, whereas you don't. Basically, throughout the game, one thing I should maybe reveal is one unique thing about this game is there's going to be enemies like any normal game, but then in this game there's going to be little helper buddies that are rats. So throughout the game, you're going to kind of start like a prison gang. So you're a prisoner, and you're going to be able to meet other prisoners, which will be kind of like characters you can change between. But then also you can get like a gang, like an army of rats. So when you run into a rat, it'll start following you around. And then you'll have like a trail of rats following you around throughout the game, basically. And then the rats can die and go off, and basically different rats will have different things that they can do. So some rats will go and get items for you and bring them back to you. Some rats will like dig holes and like create paths for you. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work, but that's an idea I had. And then there's also going to be rats that will help you attack enemies. So basically, the player does most of the heavy lifting, but the rats help out throughout the game. And I think I've been giving it a lot of thought, and there's a bunch of ways that can be fun, basically. But as of right now, the rats ignore you, and they just go walking up and down walls. The rats are actually going to be probably the hardest thing in the entire game to program, so I'm a little bit scared to do it right now. But yeah, so anyway, if you're wondering about the rats, that's one thing. Yeah, so there's actually a bunch more work that I did, but I'm not going to show it right now because it's not done. Some stuff like involving the new camera. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for this video. Another thing I'm going to do actually is when this guy talks, I'm going to have his head bob up and down a bit. So he's going to like bounce a little bit right when he first starts talking. And yeah, I also mentioned that the mouth on the angry animation wasn't animated right. There was too much teeth, but now I fixed it. So this is what it'll actually look like. And there's a little bug with the eyes. Sometimes he blinks wrong, but I'll fix that too. But yeah, I am pretty happy with the camera. It definitely adds something when it zooms in, because it works. And then there's going to be other situations where it zooms in a little bit too. I do want to talk about the player because it's just been a stickman this whole time, but that's another thing I'm going to reveal later. Because that's one thing that's going to be really unique about this game is the player. And the rats are not going to look like this. They're going to look completely different than this, as well as the player. So I'm going to talk about that later, though. Yeah, so I guess for now, that's about it. Gonna keep on keeping on and keep the progress going. Could be getting more done, but this week I actually cleaned up a lot of code. Yeah, actually, maybe I could show that quickly. Like, let's see what this looks like. Yeah, so the main thing I cleaned up was this avatar. So every avatar is going to blink. Every avatar is going to be able to talk. And every avatar has certain characteristics that where like certain elements of them where the color changes. So the hair, the eyes, the skin. So since all avatars share things in common, the code I don't want to have to recode it every time I add a new avatar. So I had to take the code that I had and make it as like I don't know the word I'm looking for, but reusable as possible. So now I have this avatar class, and all the avatar really does is it'll initialize the when it first shows up, it'll get everything set up, and then it just copies the player, like the entity, whichever entity I'm looking at, like this one, it'll copy how often it blinks, and then it'll just open and close its mouth. So since all avatars do that, I had to clean up this code to make it work for any avatar. There's also going to be like a head bob, like bounce up and down function that they're all going to share. But yeah, the cool thing is, since this is now cleaned up, every time I add a new avatar, I don't have to do any coding whatsoever. All I have to do is, I'll show you. So this is all I'll have to do for each avatar. I give it an ID, and then I just define which parts of the body it has. So does it have hair? Because some avatars will be bald. Does it have a shirt? Like this guy doesn't have a shirt on. Is there something extra? So I can have like maybe some of the female avatars might have like a bow in their hair. So that'll be something extra where the color can change. And then do the eyes have skin on them? So like this eye, part of the eye sprite has a little bit of skin on it. So I have to say true or false for that. Whereas some eyes might be closer to the middle of your head, and then I don't have to draw the skin coming off like this. Then is there the white of your eye? So like these eyes, there's like a white background, but not necessarily gonna all be like that. And then the mouth, basically the mouth can also have like something extra on it. So in this case, it's a mustache. And then I can define, does it have something extra? And is the extra the same color as the hair? So in this case, he has something extra, which is a mustache, and it's the same color as the hair. So it's really convenient when you have code like this that you can just really easily reuse. Because I basically never have to code anything related to this guy. I'm done now. I don't have to ever code it again. When I add in a new avatar, all I have to do is animate it and then create a sprite sheet and then give it an ID, and then it'll just work. So I also need to clean up a whole bunch of stuff to make it work like that. Like for example, the NPCs. A lot of NPCs will be able to walk. They'll all be able to blink. You know, there's all kinds of things they'll share in common. But right now, I just threw all the code into one specific entity, this prisoner 0. And now, like, if I wanted to add another prisoner, like prisoner 1, I'd have to either copy and paste all this code and then make little changes, or I have to clean it up. And cleaning it up is easier said than done, because it is actually quite complicated. And the logic for all of them isn't always the same. So for the dialogue, they always all, like, they can all do the same stuff basically when you're for the avatar and the dialogue. But the NPCs that walk around in the world, some of them have different things that they can do. So it's a little bit more complicated to clean it up with when there's differences. Like the more differences, the harder it is basically. But yeah, anyway, this isn't meant to be like a programming tutorial, so I'm not going to get too in depth. But a lot of work does go into like writing the code, and then later I have to actually clean it up. Because when you write it the first time, in theory, you could put a bunch of planning into it, and then you wouldn't need to clean it up. But in reality, a lot of times you won't. You don't have the foresight to know what you're going to need. And it's a lot of times it's better to just do it and then clean it up later. But anyway, I don't want to drag this video on too long. So, having a lot of fun working on the game. I got another week where I can go as much as I can, because I took like another week off of vacation days. So definitely check me back next week or every other week. But yeah, I'm looking forward to what I have to show next week, because there was some stuff I coded that I'm not going to show right now, but it's pretty cool. I think it'll be pretty cool when it's done. So anyway, that's it. See you.